Hey guys, what's up? Sorry for the delay in this video. I actually left this at home, so I haven't had a chance to film the follow-up video to the Slugbow build. However, here we go. So I wanted to actually get to use it before I talked about it, so I ended up finishing it all completely just in time for APOC last year. So I actually brought it and used that as my primary for the day, so I do have a fair bit of experience actually using this blaster now, so I can feel a little bit better about talking about it. For those of you who haven't seen the first part, basically I just printed it out and sort of put it together. I didn't actually film the painting and the whole process of actually doing the finishing touches and assembly, just because I really didn't have time to, because it was sort of in a rush for APOC. However, here it is, and obviously I broke it, so we'll go over that in a second. Just to go over the finishing and painting process real quick, I finished it with a primer filler, and basically I did a few coats of that, and I did some additional sanding. So it did come out fairly smooth. However, in some areas where it was a little harder to sand, you can still tell that it was 3D printed, whereas when I brought it to APOC, some people didn't pick it up right away. So that was kind of a good indicator that the blaster was finished fairly decently. It was very lightly painted with this orange color. I did the black by hand, and then I did give it a slight matte clear coat. However, it seems to have scratched off in certain areas after a hard day of field use. So this is the full K26 version, so it actually has this extra end cap piece, and you can see that it actually started splitting a little bit. There were some slight errors in the print, so I feel that it's not necessarily an error in the design, it's more of that the errors in the print were made way worse with the force of a full-length K26 just slapping it into it all day, because there's not really any padding in the front either, so that's probably the reasoning behind that. Just a side note, I really like the clear plunger tube in this blaster. I'm glad I went with clear over an opaque, because just seeing the spring and the plunger head move and then go back and forth is really cool. So to go over the obvious elephant in the room, yes, I did actually break off the stock. You can see, actually, if you look a little carefully, but basically it started to crack right around where it meets. Now to fully assemble this, oops, came apart, but basically there's two pieces to the stock, and then when you put it together, you put like these finishing nails in, and then you just glue it all together. However, it sort of is a pretty weak point just due to how thin some of these sections are. I used about 2mm shell thickness for this, which is usually plenty, and then a decent infill. However, it still ended up breaking over time. Now, that being said, I am actually not the only person to have this issue. I ran into some other people who had similar issues, and I talked to Slug about it, and he actually did change the files for this based on mine and other people's having the same issue with the stock breaking in certain areas around the weak points. So there's actually a slightly updated version that has threaded rods, very similar to how this main section just has 4 threaded rods running through it. There's now, I believe, 3, one in the thin section and 2 through the other sections, and it goes through the whole stock, so that'll be a great additional support for that piece, so that rather than just the 3D printed components, especially over this long length of the extended version, which has a longer stock than the normal version, but the threaded rod will add a great additional support to that blaster, and it'll really make it a lot more sturdy. I really liked this blaster, and I used it for like the whole day. Even after it broke about halfway through, and I just pretty much used it as sort of a extended crossbow pistol. But yeah, it was kind of weird just because like it's a full-length blaster with a 16-inch barrel and a full hopper setup, so it's obviously much longer in the front, and then you sort of have a pistol grip on it. The catching mechanism is a little weird when you don't have the stock on, because if you angle the pole either too much to the right or left, it doesn't like to catch as well, and can sometimes just almost like a false catch where it catches for like half a second and then shoots, and that kind of hurts when you get slapped with that in the face, as I did. However, for the most part, it worked pretty well. Also, being that it's a full-length K26, it kind of hurts for a while after you're putting all the weight like right on this web of your hand when you're priming every time, rather than using the stock as a sort of a helper for that. It was much more comfortable with the stock. So let's get a quick firing demo of this blaster in. 234. 203, 244, 232, 217. So taking a quick look at the chronograph, we have a high of 244, a low of 203, and an average of those 5 shots being 226. Those shots were taken with slug-style Stefan darts, just because those are the typical style darts used at those kind of wars, and you obviously wouldn't make something like this to shoot with normal streamlined darts. Anything sort of over between like 150 and 300 is sort of standard game for those style wars, depending on the type of blaster, so I feel that this fits right in the middle with that. The FPS could probably also be increased with the seal. The skirt seal on this one for some reason isn't sealing quite perfectly, however, if that were to be changed, it would probably get slightly higher FPS, maybe even into the 250 average range. So overall, I'm a huge fan of this blaster, even though I had a lot of issues with the stock primarily. I feel that a lot of the printing issues with the front are mostly on my end, whereas the stock was more the fault of the design, just having a slight weak point in it, as other people who printed it differently also had the same issue. Now that the stock part is corrected from a file perspective, I'll probably revisit this blaster again in the near future, as I still have enough materials to actually make more than one. So I'll probably reprint a whole new one. We can hang this one up somewhere just as a first attempt on a wall or something, and then we can proceed and make another one that's going to be the functional use one. Not that this one's not functional, it's just slightly uncomfortable with the stock being broken off, and I'm actually surprised with how well the plunger rod stayed together, being that it's fully 3D printed out of PLA, so I thought I'd have some issues with that. However, it's held up like a champ. That also has a threaded rod in it, so it's not just like, the sheer strength of the plastic holding a K26, it's primarily the threaded rod. However, I thought that the plastic would wear away over time. Anyway, guys, I give this blaster a good recommendation. Like I said, I'm going to revisit it. The entire blaster itself was just about a kilogram of plastic, if not a little more, if I remember correctly, so I'll probably reprint it. Being that a kilogram of plastic for a 3D printer goes for anywhere, 25, $30 for a good quality roll. That's really not a lot for a blaster that, if you wanted the original version of, would be like $150 stock, plus you'd have to throw the modding materials into it. So being that the total cost of this blaster with the parts and the filament, not including like print time or if you had to pay someone to print it, but if you have a printer or have someone who's willing to print it for you, and you have the ability to make the internals, which are actually pretty darn easy, like cutting the tube really and just, putting it all together, it's probably only about like, $45, $50 of material total, so it's really cheap for the performance you're getting. Plus, it's a really easy assembly. I mean, like the whole body just pretty much sits together the way it is now, and then you just throw some threaded rods through and they go pretty much from here all the way to the back, and that holds the main body together. And then now there's additional ones for the stock, so it's really just putting that together, gluing the two portions of the stock, and then gluing this piece onto the top. And it's pretty darn easy. The rest of the pieces just sort of fit in here. There's a catch. Plunger rod just has also a threaded rod through it, so really easy assembly. I think anyone could do it. So Slug is obviously stepping up the 3D printed blaster game with this blaster and the Caliburn. The Caliburn's obviously far more popular than this one. However, this one sort of gets my vote, being that it's sort of got that vintage Nerf feel to it, which is, I don't know how to describe, because it's just a lot of fun to use. I guess that's the best way to put it. I plan on building a Caliburn in the next, few months as well, so we'll see if we can get a side-by-side comparison maybe one day. However, for right now, this is the only one I've actually printed the whole thing of, and I'm pretty happy with it, so I have no complaints. Well, I guess complaints could be that they broke. However, that's fixed now, so we'll have to reprint it and give that one a stab. But like I said, he's definitely listening to feedback and has actually made corrections, so that's super cool on his part as well. Anyway, guys, I think I'm rambling on this point, so we're going to cut the video off. I hope you enjoyed this look at the sort of finished product, and hopefully we can get another one made in the near future. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video.